Welcome, dear listeners, to the shadow behind you, where the veils between the living and the lost grow thin, and the whispers of the damned rise from the earth to claim their due. I am your guide through these twilight realms, the one who unearths the bones of histories long buried, the tales that time itself has tried to swallow whole. Tonight, we venture into the heart of America's shadowed underbelly, a place where the land remembers every trespass, every drop of blood spilled in the name of conquest or survival. We speak of the Ozark Mountains in the year 1776, a time when the colonies raged with revolutionary fire, but far from the battlefields. In the wild, untamed folds of the wilderness, something far older and more malevolent stirred. Imagine, if you will, the Ozarks as they were then. Not the quaint hills of folklore and fiddle tunes we know today, but a primordial labyrinth of jagged limestone cliffs, dense forests of oak and hickory that clawed at the sky, and hidden hollows where the sun dared not linger. The air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, the ground alive with the rustle of unseen creatures slithering through the underbrush. Rivers carved through the rock like veins of forgotten gods, their waters murmuring secrets to those foolish enough to listen. This was no empty land. It pulsed with the spirits of the Osage, the Quapaw, the Cherokee, peoples who had walked these paths for centuries, honoring the sacred balance between man and the wild. But in 1776, as the echoes of independence declarations rippled across the Atlantic seaboard, a family arrived, drawn by whispers of untapped riches or perhaps fleeing the chaos of war. The Pruitt family, a name that should evoke nothing now, erased from ledgers, scrubbed from maps, vanished as if the mountains themselves devoured their memory. Let me paint their arrival for you, slow and deliberate, like the fog that rolls in from the valleys at dusk. Elijah Pruitt, the patriarch, a stern man of 40 winters, his face etched with the scars of frontier skirmishes and the unyielding gaze of a Puritan soul. His wife Abigail, fragile yet fierce, her hands calloused from birthing 5 children in the unforgiving wilds. The eldest son, Thomas, barely 20, with eyes that burned like embers, hungry for land and legacy. Then the daughters Sarah, ethereal and watchful, attuned to the whispers of the wind, and young Eliza, no more than 12, whose laughter once cut through the gloom like a blade, and the twins, Jacob and Josiah, boys of 8. Inseparable shadows playing in the dappled light. They came with wagons laden with dreams, seeds for planting, axes for claiming, Bibles for warding off the unknown. But the Ozarks do not yield easily. The mountains watch, they wait, and they remember. Our tale begins on a crisp autumn eve, as the Pruitts crested the final ridge, their horses foaming at the mouth, the wheels of their cart groaning under the weight of ambition. Below them stretched a valley untouched by European hands, a basin rimmed by sheer bluffs that seemed to cradle secrets in their stony embrace. Elijah halted the team, his breath visible in the chilling air, and declared, "This is our Eden." But Abigail shivered not from the cold, but from the unnatural silence that blanketed the land. No birdsong, no scamper of squirrels, only the distant rumble of thunder that never broke. As they descended, the trees closed in like sentinels, their branches intertwining overhead to form a canopy that filtered the light into fractured shards. The ground softened underfoot, mossy and treacherous, hiding sinkholes that could swallow a man whole. That first night, as they pitched their tent amid the ruins of what seemed an ancient stone circle, perhaps a forgotten native mound, they heard it, a low, guttural howl that reverberated through the hollows, not wolf nor bear, but something primal, something that curdled the blood. The Ozark howler, the locals would later whisper, a beast of legend with horns like a stag and eyes that glowed with infernal fire. But the Pruitts dismissed it as wind through the caves, huddling closer to their fire, unaware that they had trespassed into a domain where curses lingered like mist. What followed was no mere pioneer hardship. Whispers in the dark, shadows that moved against the wind, dreams that bled into waking hours. Tools vanished only to reappear stained with blood not their own. Crops planted in fertile soil withered overnight, twisted into shapes that resembled screaming faces. And then the vanishings began. Subtle at first, a child wandering too far, returning with eyes glazed and tales of the watchers in the woods. But soon, the family unraveled, thread by thread, as if an invisible hand pulled at the seams of their sanity. Why has this tale been forbidden, erased from the annals? Because, dear listeners, the Pruitt family's doom was not random misfortune. It was a reckoning, a curse woven from the threads of stolen land, desecrated spirits, and the hubris of those who believe they can tame the wild. Records of their settlement, burned in unexplained fires. Descendants, scattered or silenced, their bloodline fading like echoes in a cavern, even now in the quiet towns dotting the Ozarks. Elders speak in hushed tones of the erased ones, warning that to utter the name Pruitt is to invite the shadows home. As we delve deeper, feel the chill settle into your bones. The mountains are listening, and they hunger for stories untold. Stay with me, for the shadow behind you grows longer with every word. What befell the Pruitts was no accident. It was the land's vengeance, a dark history that refuses to stay buried. And tonight we exhume it piece by chilling piece. Let us step back into that fateful autumn of 1776, where the Pruitt family's wagon train creaked down the narrow deer paths into the heart of the Ozark wilderness. Elijah Pruitt, a man forged in the fires of colonial strife, had heard tales from fur trappers in St. Louis. Vast tracts of land ripe for the taking, far from the redcoats and revolutionaries clashing on the eastern shores. He was no stranger to hardship, born in the shadow of the Appalachians. He had lost his parents to a Shawnee raid in his youth, fueling a deep-seated distrust of the native peoples. The Lord provides for the righteous, he would intone, his voice a gravelly sermon, as he led his family westward. Abigail, his wife of 20 years, clutched her worn Bible to her chest, her once vibrant auburn hair now streaked with gray from the trials of the trail. She had borne him 7 children, though 2 lay buried in shallow graves along the Ohio River, victims of fever and famine. Thomas, the eldest, rode ahead on a sturdy bay horse, his rifle slung across his back, scanning the tree line for threats. Sarah, 17 and blooming into womanhood, walked beside the wagon, her skirts brushing against ferns that released a pungent, earthy scent with each step. Eliza skipped ahead, collecting oddly shaped stones that glittered like fool's gold in the dappled sunlight. The twins, Jacob and Josiah, perched on the wagon's tail, their identical freckled faces alight with boyish wonder, whispering of adventures in this new paradise. They chose a clearing near a crystal-clear spring, its waters bubbling from a fissure in the rock, cold and sweet to the taste. Elijah marked the boundaries with notches in the trees, claiming 100 acres in the name of God and grit. By nightfall, a rough lean-to sheltered them, its walls of felled saplings lashed with vines. The fire crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows that danced like specters on the surrounding bluffs. Abigail prepared a stew of salted pork and wild onions foraged from the forest floor, the aroma mingling with the sharp tang of pine resin. But as the stars emerged pinpricks in the velvet sky, unease settled over the camp like a shroud. Eliza, ever the sensitive one, whimpered in her sleep, murmuring of eyes in the dark. Thomas dismissed it as childish fancy, but even he felt the weight of unseen gazes upon them. In the wee hours, a fog rolled in, thick and cloying, muffling sounds and distorting shapes. Elijah awoke to the sound of footsteps circling the lean-to, soft, deliberate pads that could belong to man or beast. He grabbed his musket, heart pounding, and stepped into the mist. "Who's there?" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the cliffs. Silence answered, broken only by a distant hoot of an owl that sounded mocking, almost human. Dawn brought relief, but also discovery. Around their camp, in a perfect circle, lay footprints, not of deer or bear, but bare human feet, imprinted deeply as if by great weight. Sarah traced one with her finger, shivering at the coldness of the earth.
"Pa, these ain't natural,"
she whispered. Elijah scowled, attributing it to wandering natives, and set the boys to work clearing land. Axes bit into wood with rhythmic thuds, the scent of fresh sap filling the air. By week's end, A cabin began to take shape, sturdy logs notched and fitted, a stone hearth for warmth, punch-in floors smoothed by Abigail's broom. Yet the anomalies persisted. Tools left in the open vanished overnight, only to reappear in odd places. Thomas's knife embedded in a tree trunk, as if thrown with force, Eliza's doll hanging from a high branch, its button eyes replaced with acorns. The spring's water, once pure, took on a metallic tang like blood. Abigail tasted it and spat, her face paling. "Something's fouled it," she said, but no source could be found. One evening, as the family gathered for supper, a storm brewed on the horizon, clouds boiling like witches' cauldrons. Thunder rumbled, shaking the ground, and lightning illuminated the valley in stark flashes. In one such burst, Josiah pointed to the ridge above these silhouettes of figures, tall and gaunt, standing motionless.
Look, the Watchers!
He cried. The family froze, hearts in throats, as the shapes seemed to multiply, encircling the heights. Rain lashed down, extinguishing the fire, plunging them into darkness. Huddled inside, they listened to the deluge, but beneath it, a chanting, low, guttural words in a tongue unknown, rising and falling with the wind. Morning revealed no trace of the figures, but the land felt changed. The trees leaned inward as if closing ranks. Elijah, defiant, pushed on, planting corn in the loamy soil. But the seeds sprouted twisted, vines coiling like serpents, bearing fruits that wept a sticky sap. Sarah, wandering to gather herbs, found a cave mouth hidden behind a cascade of vines. Curiosity drew her in, the air inside was chill, walls glistening with moisture that dripped like tears. Deeper, she discovered carvings, ancient symbols of spirals and horned figures, etched by hands long gone. A whisper echoed, "Leave or join us." She fled, breath ragged, and confided only in Abigail, who prayed fervently that night. Tensions mounted. Thomas, hunting in the woods, felled a deer, but as he approached, it rose unnaturally, its eyes milky white, before collapsing again. The meat, when cooked, tasted of ash and regret. The twins began sleepwalking, found at the cave's edge, murmuring in unison. Eliza drew pictures in the dirt, a family vanishing into shadows, swallowed by the mountain. Elijah, sensing the unraveling, sought counsel from a passing trader, a grizzled Frenchman named Duval, who knew the native ways. Over a shared pipe, Duval spoke in hushed tones.
"This valley, it's taboo. The Osage call it Spirit Hollow long ago."
A shaman cursed it after white men desecrated a burial ground. Those who stay, they fade, become part of the mist. Elijah laughed it off, but doubt gnawed at him. As winter approached, the hauntings intensified. Shadows detached from walls, slithering across the floor like ink spills. Abigail woke to find bruises on her arms, shaped like handprints. Thomas heard his name called from the woods, in voices mimicking lost siblings. The family clung to faith, reciting psalms by candlelight, but the flames flickered as if breathed upon by invisible lips. One fateful night, under a blood moon, the howler returned, its cry a symphony of agony, shaking the cabin. The door rattled, as if clawed by unseen hands. Elijah barred it, musket ready, but the assault ceased abruptly. In the silence, Eliza screamed, "They're inside!" The family turned to see Jacob standing rigid, eyes rolled back, speaking in a voice not his own. "You have awakened the erased. Your blood will feed the roots." The terror had only begun. The Pruitts, once hopeful pioneers, now teetered on the brink of madness, the mountains closing in like a noose. As the grip of winter tightened around Spirit Hollow in late 1776, the Pruitt family's fragile sanctuary crumbled under the weight of unrelenting horrors. The cabin, once a bulwark against the wild, now felt like a tomb, its walls whispering accusations in the creaks of settling logs. Snow fell in relentless sheets, blanketing the valley in a pristine shroud that hid the malevolence beneath. Elijah, his beard frosted with ice, ventured out daily for wood, his footsteps crunching in the silence, always with the sensation of being followed. Prince trailed his own, bare feet in the snow, unfazed by the cold. Abigail, her spirit fraying, tended the hearth, but the fire burned low, as if starved of oxygen. Meals grew meager. Game avoided their traps, and stored provisions rotted overnight, crawling with maggots that formed patterns resembling ancient runes. The children withdrew, Eliza huddled in corners, rocking and humming tuneless melodies. The twins, once boisterous, stared vacantly, their bond now a shared trance. Sarah, the most resilient, confided in her journal, pages filled with frantic scrawls of visions, spectral natives dancing around bonfires, their faces melting into skulls. Conflict erupted when Thomas, driven by frustration, confronted Elijah. "This land is poison, Pi. We must leave before it claims us all." Elijah, eyes blazing, struck him. "Coward! The Lord tests us, and we endure." But doubt seeded in his heart, especially after discovering the cave's deeper chambers. Armed with a lantern, he explored, the flame casting grotesque shadows on walls adorned with petroglyphs, depictions of a great spirit, a horned guardian devouring intruders. At the cavern's heart, an altar of bones, human and animal intertwined, pulsed with an unnatural warmth. A voice boomed in his mind. "Your line ends here." Haunting events escalated. One midnight, as winds howled like banshees, the family awoke to scratching at the door. Elijah opened it to nothingness, but turning back, found the twins gone, vanished from their beds without a trace. Panic ensued. Lanterns pierced the storm, calls echoing unanswered. Dawn revealed them at the spring, frozen stiff but alive, lips blue, babbling of the Blue Man, who led them, a legendary Ozark specter, a lost soul doomed to wander, luring children to icy graves. Sarah, seeking solace, wandered to a nearby bluff, where she encountered a vision, translucent figures of Osage warriors, their eyes hollow pits, pointing accusingly. Thieves. They intoned, their voices a chorus of rustling leaves. She collapsed, feverish, and upon waking in the cabin, bore marks, tattoo-like symbols burned into her skin, matching the cave's carvings. The curse deepened. Abigail, preparing broth, sliced her finger, blood dripped into the pot, but instead of diluting, it spread, turning the liquid crimson. Drinking it unwittingly, the family fell into delirium, hallucinations of feasts turning to feasts of flesh, loved ones morphing into monsters. Elijah dreamed of his ancestors, cursed for similar sins in distant lands, their fates mirrored here. In a desperate bid, Elijah sought to appease the spirits. He built a cairn of stones at the cave mouth, offering tobacco and prayers borrowed from Duval's tales. But the response was fury. An earthquake rattled the valley, splitting the earth, swallowing their cornfield. From the fissure rose mists that carried screams, echoes of past victims, perhaps earlier settlers erased from history. Thomas, rebelling, attempted escape. Saddling the horse under cover of night, he rode out, but hours later the beast returned riderless, frothing, eyes wild. Thomas was found days later, stumbling back, aged beyond recognition, hair whitened, skin wrinkled, muttering of time lost in endless woods where paths looped eternally. Eliza's fate sealed the horror. Playing near the spring, she vanished. Searches yielded only her shoe, floating in the water, stained with blood. Nights brought her cries from the bluffs, pleading for help, but pursuing them led to dead ends or treacherous drops. Abigail, heartbroken, descended into madness, clawing at the walls, convinced Eliza's spirit inhabited the cabin. The climax came on the winter solstice. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, engulfing the valley. By midday, the family barricaded inside, but the door burst open to reveal nothing. Yet one by one, they were pulled into the dark. Jacob and Josiah, giggling as invisible hands dragged them out, Sarah screaming as she faded into mist, Abigail whispering farewells as she dissolved. Thomas fought, firing his rifle into emptiness, but wounds appeared on his body, self-inflicted in delusion. Elijah alone faced the entity, a swirling vortex of shadows manifesting as the howler, horns dripping echo, eyes burning with ancestral rage. "You are the last," it growled. He fled to the cave, collapsing at the altar, where visions assaulted him, the family's erasure, records burning, descendants forgetting. In his final moments, he etched a warning on the wall: the land claims its own. Thus, the Pruitts vanished, their cabin crumbling to ruins, overgrown and forgotten. No trace remained, save whispers in the wind. To fully grasp the chilling fate of the Pruitt family, we must peel back the layers of time, delving into the historical and cultural tapestry of the Ozark Mountains in 1776. a region teeming with ancient energies, clashing cultures, and legends that blur the line between fact and phantasm. The Ozarks, often romanticized as America's rugged heartland, were in the late 18th century a frontier of shadows where European encroachment met indigenous resistance in a brew of blood and mystery. Geologically, the Ozarks are among the oldest mountains in North America, their limestone karst formations riddled with caves, sinkholes, and underground rivers, natural portals to the underworld, as many natives believed. By 1776, the area was sparsely populated by whites. The Louisiana Purchase was decades away, and Spanish colonial influence held sway from afar. Early explorers like Hernando de Soto in the 1540s had passed near, leaving tales of hostile tribes and treacherous terrain. But settlement was minimal. The land belonged to Native American nations. The Osage Nation dominated the northern Ozarks, fierce warriors known as the people of the Middle Waters. They hunted vast territories, clashing with eastern tribes like the Shawnee and Delaware, displaced by colonial expansion. The Quapaw, or downstream people, controlled southern reaches, while Cherokee bands migrated westward, fleeing pressures from the east. These peoples viewed the land as sacred, infused with spirits, Manitus or Wakans, that guarded burial mounds and holy sites. Desecration invited curses. Folklore speaks of shamans invoking eternal wanderings or vanishings upon intruders. In 1776, as the American Revolution ignited, the Ozarks served as a refuge for loyalists, deserters, and adventurers like the Pruitts. Historical records note sporadic white incursions for trappers, missionaries, and squatters. But many vanished, attributed to harsh winters, wildlife, or native raids. Yet whispers persist of supernatural causes. The Ozark Howler, a cryptid blending bear, wolf, and demon, appears in Osage lore as a guardian spirit, its cry a warning or summons to the afterlife. Legends tell of it luring trespassers to doom, much like the Pruitt's experiences. Ozark folklore is a rich vein of eerie tales, preserved by Scotch-Irish settlers who arrived post-1800, blending Celtic superstitions with native myths. Vance Randolph's Ozark Magic and Folklore documents beliefs in witches, ghosts, and curses, signs like twisted crops or blood, tainted water as omens of spiritual wrath. The Blue Man, legend, a spectral figure haunting hollows, echoes Cherokee tales of Uktena, a horned serpent spirit. Vanishing settlements recur, like the mythical Albino Farm or cursed Dudleytown in Connecticut, parallels to Roanoke's lost colony where entire groups disappeared, leaving cryptic clues. Culturally, 1776 marked escalating tensions. The Osage signed treaties with the Spanish, but white encroachment provoked skirmishes. Folklore recounts spirit wars, where shamans cursed invaders, causing madness or erasure. Archaeological evidence supports this. Burial mounds in the Ozarks, dated to Mississippian cultures 800–1600 AD, show signs of ritual disturbance, perhaps fueling vengeful spirits. Blending fact and folklore, the Pruitt tale embodies colonial hubris. Early accounts, like those in the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, describe the region as a hinterland of mystery, where Europeans encountered phenomena defying reason, glowing orbs, will-o'-the wisps, unexplained howls, sudden fogs. Native oral histories, preserved by tribes like the Osage, speak of forgotten valleys, where time warps, trapping souls. The curse motif draws from universal indigenous beliefs, land as living entity, avenging violations. Educational yet eerie, this context reveals the Ozarks as a cauldron of cultural collision. Puritan settlers like Elijah brought biblical zeal, clashing with animistic worldviews. Superstitions abounded, avoiding certain hollows at night, offerings to appease spirits. The Pruitt's story, though erased, mirrors real vanishings. Trappers lost in caves, families abandoned amid rumors of hauntings. In blending these elements, we see unsettling authenticity, the land's memory, etched in rock and root, refusing to forget. The Ozarks' dark history, slavery, civil war, guerrilla warfare later, builds on this foundation, but in 1776 it was primal, a place where folklore birthed reality. Beyond the surface chills of the Pruitt saga lies a labyrinth of symbolic and psychological depths, connecting this erased tale to universal fears, cultural traumas, and the shadowy recesses of human nature. At its core, The story is a metaphor for colonial intrusion, the manifest destiny that ravaged indigenous worlds, leaving curses as echoes of guilt. Symbolically, the Ozarks represent the untamed subconscious, their caves Freudian gateways to repressed horrors. The Pruitt's descent mirrors the hero's journey, inverted arrival as hubris, hauntings as confrontation with the author, vanishing as dissolution. The howler embodies the animus, the wild, vengeful force suppressed by civilization. Blood-tainted water symbolizes corrupted purity, the land's lifeblood poisoned by theft. Psychologically, the curse explores collective trauma. Vanishings evoke existential dread, the fear of oblivion amplified in a new world where identities fractured. For natives, it's cultural erasure. For settlers, the terror of failure. The family's madness reflects projection, attributing inner demons to external spirits, a Jungian shadow archetype. Eliza's sensitivity highlights innocence lost, children as vessels for ancestral sins. Thematically, it ties to universal fears, isolation in vast wilderness, the unknown lurking in shadows. Like Lovecraft's cosmic horror, the Pruitts face indifferent forces beyond comprehension. Cultural trauma links to America's original sin, genocide and displacement. The erased history parallels suppressed narratives like buried native mounds, symbolizing forgotten atrocities. Human nature's dark side emerges, Elijah's defiance as toxic masculinity, Abigail's faith as denial. The twins' bond twists into shared doom, exploring duality, good and evil intertwined. Connect to broader folklore, Bell Witch as familial curse, Roanoke as collective vanishing, reflecting societal anxieties. In an ominous lens, the tale warns of environmental reckoning, land as avenger in an era of climate crisis. Intellectually, it probes memory's fragility, how histories are erased by victors, yet persist in folklore. Ultimately, the Pruitts haunt us as mirrors, our intrusions, our forgets, our shadows. As our journey through the forbidden tale of the Pruitt family draws to a close, the shadows lengthen, and the Ozarks' whispers grow insistent. In 1776 they came seeking Eden, but found only the maw of oblivion, a curse that devoured not just flesh, but memory itself. Elijah's final warning, etched in stone, echoes still, the land claims its own. What lingers is the chill of unanswered questions. Were the Pruitts victims of native vengeance, or their own delusions? Does the howler still prowl those hollows, erasing the unwary? In quiet Ozark towns, elders avert eyes at the name, fearing invocation. Perhaps the curse endures, a bloodline's ghost haunting descendants unaware. Dear listeners, as you turn off the light, remember, the shadow behind you is never truly gone. It waits, patient as the mountains, for the moment you forget. Sleep well, if you can.